Today's episode, if you are missing out, is sponsored by Fiverr. You may know Fiverr as the preferred source for freelance services, but did you know that they also provide online courses as well? Learn from Fiverr is an online, on-demand video classes platform specially tailored for freelancers and professionals. All classes are taught by top experts who are distinguished in their fields. These courses contain practical and comprehensive knowledge. By taking the course, you'll level up your skills and grow professionally. And by successfully passing the course's final quiz, you'll showcase your new capabilities. And the best part? Pay only for courses you want to take, with no monthly fees. Visit our show notes for more information to see if there's a Learn from Fiverr course for you. Every course you enroll in using our link goes directly to making this show better. Thank you for your support.
And now, on with the show.
Gentlemen, what's a lesser-known film from a famous director's filmography that you think is one of their best?
You know, my partner and I recently rewatched the Godfather films, and I was talking about the miracle run of Coppola from Godfather Conversation, Godfather 2 Apocalypse Now, and then people just treat it as those four, but I have such a love for One from the Heart, Coppola's, famous blank check that flopped. I love that film. I think it's incredible, and what is baffling to me is that people are so desperate to reclaim mistreated movies. These days, people are looking at older films that bombed, like a Heaven's Gate or whatever, and they're all trying to reclaim it and say, like, oh, this is so good, this is so great, or even recent bombs like Babylon, and no one is reaching back to kind of reclaim One from the Heart and talk about just the sheer audacity that movie took and the big swings that it takes. I think it is the epitome of Coppola as a filmmaker, as we can see now with his kind of grandiose megalopolis production situation. One from the Heart fits so perfectly into that narrative. So I think it's a wildly underrated film from Francis.
So for me, you would think I would pick something like Streets of Fire, but I think Streets of Fire is getting its reputations completely turned around. I think at this point it's one of the most popular and loved Walter Hill movies. It's a hit at this point. So for me, I think I landed on one that feels kind of similar within this director's filmography as Shadow of a Doubt does with Hitchcock. I am picking Munich from Steven Spielberg because, like Shadow of a Doubt, it was a hit at the time. It got award nominations, but it didn't have the same level of popularity that over time, it doesn't have the same level of popularity as other Spielberg movies, same as this one is overshadowed by a lot of other Hitchcock movies. But I think, like this is one of Spielberg's best movies. It's dark, it's thrilling, it's some of the best directing he's ever done, and that's saying something. It's the start of an amazing collaboration with Tony Kushner that has yielded big results in the last 2 years. I think latter-day Spielberg, at least post 9/11 Spielberg, for a long time was not getting kind of the respect he should have been getting. He's been on a hell of a run, like really since the 21st century started, even before that. And people are coming around on movies like War of the Worlds and like Lincoln's getting a big push. But I think Munich may be the most adult, bleak, upsetting movie he's ever made. And it's a movie that reminds you that he is at heart, he is a horror filmmaker. You know, he got his start making horror movies. He's the reason why the PG-13 rating exists, because he couldn't stop scaring the shit out of kids in Temple of Doom and Gremlins and shit. I think this is one of his best movies. It's underrated. And it seems like it's going to continue to be underrated as we've now entered another era of Spielberg's great with the Bridge of Spies, The Post, West Side Story, Fabelmans. Munich is kind of getting left by the wayside as people seem to go more towards War of the Worlds as the post 9/11 movie for Spielberg. So that's my pick, Munich.
Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, we're covering the film Alfred Hitchcock loved above all others he directed. Micah McCaw joins us for 1943's Shadow of a Doubt.
Our guest today is co-host of the McCaw podcast universe and an indie rock musician who just released his third album, A Beautiful Divorce. Micah McCaw joins us on the show. Micah, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Excited to talk some Hitchcock, as our podcast does not allow for Hitchcock talk usually.
And why is that, Micah? If you'd like to explain your show to our parents.
Tom, an amazingly smooth transition to that plug. Landed that plane.
Hey,
Well,
I'm Denzel in Flight, baby.
And I'm, oh man, my brain is not working. I'm Gerard Butler in Plane.
Oh,
You're John Plane.
Goodman.
No, we cover film franchises, so our only opportunity to cover Hitchcock would be Psycho, and I'm too scared to watch any of those movies.
2 is
afterward
great.
Because Psycho is like maybe my third favorite movie. It's like right up at the top. So,
Well, he is honestly, Psycho would be a good one for you guys because Psycho 2 is actually like shockingly a great movie.
Okay.
It shouldn't work. Written by Tom Holland, who would go on to do Child's Play and Fright Night. Oh god, I can't remember the director's name. But he was one of those guys in the 70s and 80s who was a big Hitchcock acolyte, like De Palma and some of the other people. And they get the feel of Psycho while transplanting it to like an 80s sensibility. So it is a little bloodier, but it's not full on schlock. It's like
Okay.
it actually works. Like there is a section of people, and not just dipshits on Twitter, like, not that he's the sanest man in the world, but like Quentin Tarantino says it's the best Psycho movie.
Oh.
I wouldn't go that far, but it's closer than it has any right to be. Psycho 3 is deranged because it is just an 80s slasher movie with Norman Bates, as he's getting into a rivalry with fucking Jeff Fahey. Psycho 4 is not good because Mick Garris directed it, and he should be put in the Hague. But then the Psycho remake's interesting because you're like, it's bad, but you go, okay, like you get what he's trying to do, but wow, he made a lot of bad decisions here. And then if you're really feeling frisky, Bates Motel is actually a good show. Like, it's not Hannibal level, but it's actually a good show.
Kyle, do you want to just copy and paste all of that into next season's Psycho episode just to save us some time on that one?
Well, you see, the great thing is I'm not going to remember I did this.
Not a chance. Not a chance. So, Mikey, you talked about, you cover franchises on your podcast, and we've actually been on your show twice now.
Yeah.
We were on talking about Scream 4.
Yes.
We were on talking about Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I assume the next time will be about the Antoine Dionel trilogy, I think. Or I was trying to think of the least horror B-movie franchise.
Well, obviously, we'll have to do, like, The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. Just to get into another Wes Craven.
Christoph Kieslowski's Three Colors trilogy,
Or what is it? Koyanis Katsi, that trilogy?
the Katsi trilogy. The Coker trilogy. We'll do that. We'll come on for We'll come on for Where Is the Friend's House. Anyway, Mike. So you guys cover franchises. Like I said, we've been on there for Scream 4. We've been on there for New Nightmare. It's been a lot of fun, and we've been meaning to get you on our show. So I sent you over the list of films, and as you noted, you picked Shadow of a Doubt because you said, we would never get to talk about Hitchcock on your show. And I think that there's an extra interesting thing about this for the discussion, which is you said, you mentioned Psycho being one of your favorite films of all time, right?
Yes.
So it's worth noting, we're on our third season of the show, so we're looking at the third year of inductees to the registry. The only Hitchcock we have covered so far is Vertigo. The only Hitchcock film to get into the registry so far in our chronology was in the inaugural year they brought in Vertigo. And then this year was in 1991, Shadow of a Doubt. And it isn't until the next year that Psycho gets in. So I just want to introduce that and make sure that our audience is aware of that part of our discussion today, I think, is the interesting fact that, in 1991, when it came down to decide, like, what's getting in, before some of the more well-known titles, right? I mean, before North by Northwest, before Psycho, before Rear Window, before The Birds, before pretty much any of the Hitchcock films that would get parodied in High Anxiety, or any of the Hitchcock films that when you would go to Universal Studios in Orlando and they'd do the Alfred Hitchcock experience, they would have the Dial M for Murder phone, and they would have the hang off the Mount Rushmore set. But there was never a point in the Universal Studios attraction when they're like, and here's the odd sexual tension between Joseph Cotten and Teresa Wright.
They should have just had a guy dressed up like Joseph Cotten running around saying, "Are you my niece? Do you want to go out? Are you my niece? Can I caress you softly while I plot your doom?"
Now look over here. Here's two weird old men talking about murder books. Everybody, hope you're enjoying. Now get your fast pass for the King Kong ride. Like it was
1976.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, it is very weird because so you're saying Vertigo beats it.
Vertigo gets in the inaugural year, yeah.
And that totally tracks for me. Like that is you if you're talking Hitchcock, you have to talk about Vertigo, of course.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at his filmography, it's not like they're doing it chronologically, because he's got like The Lodger, A Story of the London Fog, which is somewhat of a classic. And then you got 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much, The Lady Vanishes, and these are all before Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah.
So it's not like a chronological thing. That's not to say this movie doesn't rule. Okay?
Oh, it's one of these things that we've talked about on the show before, which is one of the fascinating things about doing this, induction year by induction year, is it's not just a matter of what films are considered, canonical now, but also looking and going, okay, well, what was it about 1991? What was it in this time? And the people talking about film at this time, that this film had the same power. Last season we talked about, it's a fantastic film, Walter Huston's Dodsworth, for example, but it's not, it's not on the tip of anyone's tongue now. And in 1991, it was definitely more relevant and more on people's minds. And this comes up a lot in terms of what we consider canon and what we don't. And part of the reason why I think we all appreciate the fact the registry says a movie has to be 10 years old before it gets in is allowing enough time to pass for the people assessing these works to be able to say, yes, this actually has cultural staying power.
Yeah.
All of that said, the other thing it's worth noting, you mentioned Hitchcock's filmography. This is his second film to get inducted, but he would go on to now be tied for the fourth most films in the registry of any director, right?
Okay.
John Ford has the most. He has 11. Howard Hawks and William Wyler each have 10. And Hitchcock is technically tied with Leo McCarey and George Cukor, who all have 9 in the registry. But Hitchcock is the only one where all of the films are actually credited to him.
Okay. Can we go down the rabbit hole? Which movies do they have officially now?
You're talking about Hitchcock?
Yeah, because I know my 10 or so that I would choose, but
what if I just started reading it and it's like Frenzy and Jamaica Inn?
Yeah.
Family plot.
Family plots. Okay, so this is not in the order that they get in, right?
Okay.
This is just Rebecca, Shadow of a Doubt, Notorious, Strangers on a Train, Rear Window, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds.
Okay.
Oh.
And Strangers on a Train, I believe, got in like maybe a year ago, I think.
Okay.
Because that was one we reacted to live on an episode. So I know that it got in, I think either 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was. I just know we talked about it on our live Registry Picks reaction episode. Tom doesn't remember that, but we did talk about it.
Sure. If you know, I trust you. Just again, gonna make me really just upset that we never got that David Fincher, Gillian Flynn, Strangers on a Train remake because,
Yeah.
of all these guys that have come after Hitchcock that are so indebted to Hitchcock that really just do like Hitchcock fan films that are really allowed to be as sleazy and bloody and sexual as Hitchcock was never allowed to be, that Strangers on a Train was never one of those movies that got basically remixed into that style. So many people have redone Rear Window or Vertigo or Psycho or fucking
Jamaica
all
Inn, Juno
obviously
and the
Jamaica Inn.
Paycock.
I mean, this even got one. I mean,
How many deep cut? This episode will just be a good chunk of who can remember the most forgotten Hitchcock movies.
I mean, I got the filmography sitting in front of me, so maybe they'll do The Farmer's Wife, The Mountain Eagle.
the second season of Fleabag is obviously riffing on I Confess. Um, um, See, I'm glad I got Mike laughing this hard, but the most joy I ever got out of making Mike laugh was when we hung out like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I made him laugh like his father. You let out one of those Vic Natale guffaws that I was just like, oh my god!
Kyle right now in the little notebook where he jots down like what things to cut out is just doing giant red lines. My favorite part of that though, Tom, is that minutes after you just said you don't remember us talking about Strangers on a Train on a Registry episode, you almost verbatim repeated what you said on the Registry episode. Like immediately after Kyle says Strangers on a Train, you go, I kind of feel like,
I
it just
told you.
still annoys me that we never got that David Fincher, Gillian Flynn remake. It's
Hey,
almost
I
verbatim.
told you. Psycho, not going to remember this conversation at all. Probably going to say the same thing about Strangers on a Train as well.
You don't even remember that we were on Micah's podcast. You don't know who this person is we're talking to right now. It's all a blur.
I don't even know where I am.
Tom,
I escaped from the home.
there's going to be a certain point where, like, decades from now, like, your grandkids will be like, we're a little concerned. Grandpa says he doesn't even remember what he had for dinner. And I'm like, no, it's been that way for a very long time.
It's really sweet that you think I'm ever going to have any progeny.
You will. You just won't know that you did.
No, they'll just be kids in my house, and I'll be like, how did you get in here?
Oh, God. Okay, we need to get back on track. Because
a train.
Yeah,
like Strangers on a Train.
Like a train that's about to hit Joseph Cotten. So, Shadow of a Doubt. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this is that it's often, I think part of its appeal, it often gets cited as Hitchcock's favorite film. Now, that's not necessarily true. As I get my chance to whip out,
Oh God, don't whip it out.
As I get to whip out yet again our beloved Hitchcock, our beloved Hitchcock Truffaut book, wherein two things that I love about this, and then we'll read from the registry. But two things. One is that Hitchcock disputes the fact that it's his favorite film. In fact, he goes on to say, I wouldn't say The Shadow of a Doubt is my favorite picture. If I've given that impression, it's probably because I feel that here is something that our friends, the plausibles and logicians, can't complain about. That's one thing. The other thing that's worth noting is that Truffaut fucking hates the guy that plays the detective in this movie, apparently.
Really?
At one point, so Truffaut is talking... He's talking about, him and Hitchcock are discussing, like, the black smoke at the train station at the beginning and all that. And then Truffaut just goes, with the exception of the detective, the casting is excellent. I imagine you were very pleased with the performances of Joseph Cotten and Teresa Wright. Her portrait of a young American girl was outstanding. She had a lovely face and nice shape, and her way of walking was particularly graceful. And Hitchcock just says, Teresa Wright was under contract to Goldwyn, and we got her on loan. So not only does Truffaut, for no reason at all, decide to just drag the guy who plays the detective, but Hitchcock ignores that and most of the question, which is, spoilers, the bulk of the Hitchcock Truffaut book, really. There's a good chunk of the Hitchcock Truffaut book that is just Truffaut basically going, oh, and I thought this was, the symbolism was very interesting, and Hitchcock goes, yeah, I guess.
I don't know. We put Henry Fonda in a prison cell. I don't know what to tell you.
The section about the wrong man, where Francois Truffaut keeps trying to get Hitchcock to talk about how it's some misunderstood masterpiece, and Hitchcock's response just keeps being, "It was a paycheck, and I think the movie's bad."
Just an old man having no time for this silly Frenchman.
I will say though, I watched this little documentary called Beyond Doubt: The Making of Hitchcock's favorite film that's on the DVD, and his daughter Pat does say and confirms that it is his favorite. Now I don't know if that goes against the word of the actual man himself, but it's worth noting. That's all I'm saying.
I think that it
feels a little like Rick James saying he didn't grind his dirty feet into Eddie Murphy's couch and then going, "Yeah, I remember grinding my feet into Eddie Murphy's couch." I think Hitchcock just liked to fuck with people.
Yeah, I think by that point in the conversation with Truffaut, especially because he's talking about those logicians that we talked about earlier, I think by that point in the conversation, he's just kind of, he's a bit on his artist mystique. He's a bit on, getting taken seriously. It's in that weird phase of like the French are showing up and being like, "You're a genius," but meanwhile he's making his money by doing commercials for Universal Orlando.
Right.
Which Tom, have you ever seen those?
Nope.
There is nothing you need to witness more in your life than the fact that he was doing theme park ads, and you have to see Hitchcock sitting there. Podcast The Ride did a whole segment on this once about Hitchcock, having to hear Hitchcock go, "You'll get to see props from all your favorite television shows, like the $6 Million Man." And it's just like Hitchcock describing the most banal Universal Orlando attractions from the 80s. And it just makes you wish, I wish that was still their ad campaign. I wish that he was still alive so he could sit in a tram and go, "You won't believe what the minions get up to in Despicable Me Minion Mayhem.
They are little scamps."
On
par with Peter Lorre in the original version of The Man Who...
I have shown many thrills in my films like North by Northwest and Shadow of a Doubt, but never have I experienced a thrill like Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon. That's what I want for every ad.
I have looked into the eyes of evil, and they are within these sockets owned by one James Fallon.
Kyle just put another X on the board.
Yeah. Kyle, sometimes when Kyle's on camera, he can give us a little sign, but since he's not on camera, we don't know that we have to get off this riff, so we could just go for another hour of just...
Oh, let me
Also, I never stop.
The pure joy of Men in Black alien attack. We could just... all day. Cinema is alive again with Kung Fu Panda, a 4D experience.
I found it quite amusing because I myself am rotund like a panda. And if I was able to produce some kung fu, this studio execs could never stop me.
Lifeboat. Imagine life on the water akin to Waterworld, a live sea war experience. Tom is wishing he knew Universal attractions now just to pull those out from time to time.
No, I'm still glad I don't know anything about theme parks because I am a grown man.
That is a fair justification, I do have to say.
You can live the movies just like Bill Paxton in Twister Ride It Out. Anyway.
Fuck you, Kyle.
Had to throw...
Look, all I have to say is that one day you'll have to be an adult that knows theme parks, because one day you'll be an adult with a kid who needs to know which theme parks to go to.
Why do you fucks keep thinking I'm gonna have progeny?
Because Tom, you are 1,000,000% the dad who begrudgingly goes to Disney World and his kids buy him a t-shirt of Grumpy the Dwarf as a way to say, "'Cause you're a miserable asshole." And then that's the dad who just goes, "You know what? All right, you guys go on the roller coasters. The Hall of Presidents is air conditioned, and I'm just gonna nap.
I'm getting drunk at Epcot."
That's it. You're the dad that's in the back row out cold, and the employees go, just let him rest. Just check he's breathing every time they say Millard Fillmore, but otherwise, like, let him have
he looks like a gorilla. Don't upset him.
That dad's going real hard on the Frontierland shooting gallery. I just like he's got some aggression to get out. Let's just let him have this.
Enough about theme parks.
Yeah. Before we talk more about what Hitchcock had to say, before we talk more about what Truffaut had to say, and before we talk more about what we have to say, let's talk about what the Library of Congress had to say. Here's what the National Film Registry says about Shadow of a Doubt. One of Hitchcock's favorite themes to explore was the idea of murder at the dinner table. That is, taking the horrors of murder and placing them in suburban environments, even making them popular topics among locals. Shadow of a Doubt is his most literal example of this theme, as a young girl named Charlie, portrayed by Teresa Wright, becomes terrified that her Uncle Charlie, with whom she has always been close, could be a serial killer. Hitchcock gives the movie and its setting a nice homey feel, a quiet little slice of Americana, which makes the main storyline even more disturbing. It's an intense film with undertones that are incredibly dark even for Hitchcock. And I think that that's a fair assessment because, I think we all grew up with the understanding of Alfred Hitchcock, the master of horror, the master of thrills, right? Like, he's one of the few filmmakers whose name was a household name, right? Like, I mean, when we were kids, do you guys remember, like, seeing all those ads on TV for, like, the Alfred Hitchcock Masterworks VHS box set? Like, I feel like there would be the, call the 800 number to order, and it would either be, like, Shirley Temple compilations, Three Stooges compilations, or Alfred Hitchcock collections, right? Like, we all knew him as the master of horror, master of thrills, but, like, I remember my parents renting Psycho or The Birds when I was curious about it. Because while those movies while they're scary, those movies are scary in the way that, like, monster movies are scary, right? They're like, ooh, ha, creepy stuff. That is the thing. Shadow of a Doubt is one of the few Hitchcock movies that is just kind of upsetting. It's like, it's unsettling.
It's sleazy as fuck.
Yeah.
It's sleazy in a way that isn't like Psycho, because Psycho is like on the surface sleazy. Like, you can't make a movie where a guy creeps on a woman taking a shower through a peephole and then sneaks up on her in his mom's clothes and murders her and be like, oh, well, that's not sleazy. No, that's sleazy. Like, that's obvious. Nothing on the surface in this movie happens that's off-putting. Uncle Charlie never, like, walks in on his niece, like, getting changed or whatever, and, like, stares a little too long. There's never anything like, oh, well, it's just a bad vibe the whole time. It's just, ew. I feel like someone ripped a fart, and I cannot tell where it's coming from. Is it the dog? Is it my wife? Did I do it? Am I going incontinent? I don't know.
What it taps into, and I was thinking about this a lot when he talks about murder at the kitchen table, is that this movie isn't about murder. It is in the literal sense, like that's part of the plot,
Sure.
but I think that the stuff that's upsetting in this movie is not necessarily the murders, because we never see any killing happen, right? That's the thing.
To be honest, when it starts kicking into, like, oh, he's trying to kill Charlie, and then he gets thrown off a train at the end, it's like, that's all the weakest stuff in the movie, because it's all, like, really quick. It's all the stuff in the beginning, like you're saying, where it's not about that stuff.
Well, and what I'm saying is, the masterstroke of this film is until they are on the train, right, and they have that tussle on the train, until that happens, we never actually physically see Joseph Cotten's Uncle Charlie doing anything. There's the thing about Uncle Charlie that makes him such a fascinating villain, as opposed to Norman Bates or any of the other kind of villainous characters in Hitchcock's filmography. Norman Bates, you see him and you're like, oh, this guy's real, like, he's creepy in a way that most people aren't creepy, in a way that's, like, to an extreme, and because he's a horror villain. Joseph Cotten is mostly sweet and personable, seemingly. He's the favorite uncle. He's, XYZ. But he'll just have these moments where he talks about widows like they're cattle. And he says it at
Or
the dinner table. Yeah.
walking
And
into the bank and just loudly saying, "Hey, what's up, buddy? You're gonna keep extorting money from the bank and everything?" It's like, Uncle Charlie, shut up. Oh, what? We all know people rob their bosses at the bank. It's what they do. Banks suck. Ha ha ha. I'm Joseph Cotten. And you just go, do you know not to do this in public? Do you know that you're doing this, buddy?
I think the thing about Cotton and what makes it so good is we don't, and this is something I go back to kind of a lot on the show. Like, we don't. Most people don't know serial killers, and most people don't know like that. That's, I guess, the thing. Sometimes I talk to people and I'll hear people talk about all this true crime stuff, and they'll say like, I just find like serial killers and crazy people so interesting, and I often kind of feel like I'm going, no, you don't. You find you find Hannibal Lecter interesting because he's charismatic and intellectual, or Norman Bates or what have you, but most murderers and sociopaths and things like that are either multiple MIGs from Silence of the Lambs, or they're Joseph Cotten in this movie, where it's like, there's nothing that Joseph Cotten does where you're like, oh, that's so cool. You're just like, oh, he has some fucked up opinions.
This is like the brilliance of it, where he sets up this movie, and I think, honestly, if you did not see this movie, you didn't know it was directed by Hitchcock, you could probably watch it on mute and have no idea that there was a murder element until like an hour in, maybe.
Yeah.
Because he sets it up, it's just like the setting where it's like this idyllic small town America, and, keep your doors unlocked, but the monster's inside the house. And it's like, who amongst the people your family, your friends, like, who is that Uncle Charlie, that it all looks fine.
Well, if you do it the way you say it with no sound on, you wouldn't know murder's a part of the plot until she goes to the library and looks at the newspaper because she wants to see what Uncle Charlie was hiding when he ripped out the article. But with the sound on and everything, you just know Uncle Charlie's did something because we see him at the beginning in the boarding house. Two guys are looking for him. Something's up. And he sneaks out and goes around them, and he's in hiding. Clearly something's going on. But something's off with the guy, but you don't get murder. Maybe he robbed a bank. Maybe he robbed someone, whatever. It's not until the detective reveals, yeah, I'm a detective. So there's this guy running around killing widows, and sorry to tell you, probably your uncle. Keep an eye out for us. If he kills any more widows, let us know. We're detectives, and we're just gonna, not do anything.
Well, and also, but like the other thing to note is this movie's 1943, right?
Yeah.
Setting us like, we can look at Hitchcock's filmography, and so many of his movies, even up until this point, have the twist of like the wrongly accused man, or there's some kind of twist, right?
Yeah.
There's some kind of everything's not what it seems. That's what he was doing. I mean, the movie he makes right before this is Saboteur, which is all about a wrongly accused man. And even broader in film in general, one of the things that's built into it, there are so many movies of this time that are thrillers, but offer the sort of cathartic relief at the end of whoopsie doodles. Like, so many old horror movies, old vampire movies, like I think Mark of the Vampire, or haunted house movies like The Old House, that were scary, always end with like a twist of, well, that's an odd it's actually not what you think. It's very like almost Scooby-Doo-esque, where it's like, whoa, there were no monsters. Actually, it was just somebody slipping on a roller skate or something. So I say all that to say, like,
I want to see that movie.
Now we know Hitchcock for Psycho. We know Hitchcock for Frenzy and all of these movies.
Do we know him for Frenzy though?
I'm trying to think of other murderer movies. But we know Hitchcock for or Rear Window or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, now when you watch Shadow of a Doubt, something's off with Joseph Cotten, like Tom says.
Yeah.
And they start revealing this murder thing, but I couldn't help but imagine watching it this time that, like, in 1943, it must have even hit harder because in 1943, your expectation is when they introduce the idea of him killing or they introduce the idea of there's widows being murdered, and Joseph Cotten is on the run, and he has this ring, and he doesn't want them to see what's in the paper. In 1943, in the audience, you must be sitting there going, all right, so it looks like he's the killer, but what's going to be the twist in the end that we find out that he really didn't want them to know? And then,
especially coming off of Saboteur.
Yeah.
Or not Saboteur, Suspicion.
Well, that's a little... Saboteur, Suspicion comes, and then Saboteur, yes. So they're all around the same time.
So, coming off of Suspicion...
Yeah.
Where it's playing a similar game as this, but as Hitchcock says, couldn't really do the ending he wanted, where, no, he's a killer. That's what we're building towards, but the studio wouldn't let me. As you're saying, the movies at the time, there's always the twist, or it's always about a wrongly convicted man or accused man. To be watching this going, okay, yeah, we saw Suspicion, we've seen other movies of the time. There's got to be something. I mean, they keep saying, well, there is also this other guy we think might have done it, but it's probably your uncle. But we're chasing this guy into an airplane propeller because, I mean, I guess we need a second. Which also, can I just say, that's got to be the funniest fucking thing in the whole movie. Where they just casually, where the father and the weird neighbor are just walking by. Oh, yeah, did you hear they caught the guy? Yeah, he ran into an airplane propeller. What? Are you... What? Wait, okay, I'm sorry. In what world... Like, there's a whole movie of this guy trying to escape from the police for, like Hitchcock does, something he didn't do, and then ending up at an airport, and then getting turned into tomato sauce. And the cops just like, well, we got him. Just they're on a fucking battleship with victory banner, just saying, boys, mission accomplished.
I will... Sorry, though, we need to address one thing, Tom, before we go any further. I will not allow you to refer to the character as the father. We need to address his proper name, Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
He's always just Clarence. That's that's the beauty of the old system, where it's just, well, there are people, I don't know if we'll call them actors, but they sure are characters. Let's get this guy to just do this thing that he always does. And yeah, we'll 68-year-old Clarence the Angel with his teenage daughter,
16-year-old daughter,
who's got the hots for her uncle, and his 10-year-old daughter, who's the most obnoxious know-it-all in the world, and the young son who they all keep ignoring, which makes me think, oh, he's gonna become a killer too. We're all just ignoring this kid, but we know he's skinning cats.
I think it's important, though, we talk about, I mean, one of the elements of this film that is, I don't know how to, I mean...
Another thing that makes it different from what, people were expecting at the time was serial killers weren't a thing. Like, yeah, they existed, obviously. It didn't, like, the gene didn't just pop up in the 70s, but we didn't, like, there was no language for it. People talked about Jack the Ripper, but there was no, like, serial killer. There was no profiling. And yeah, Hitchcock made The Lodger, which is a serial killer movie, but this is different. Like you said, it brings it into the American home, and it adds a personal touch to it that goes beyond something like what we'd get down the road in Silence of the Lambs or Maniac or whatever. This is someone that I love so much that I think I'm telepathically connected to them. The kind of person who's murdering people compulsively. We didn't have, people didn't have the language for this yet,
I mean, I will offer a quick correction there, Tom. I mean, you're right that we didn't have the language for the concept of serial killer per se, but what's going on with Joseph Cotten's character as the Merry Widow murderer, aside from the allusions to the operetta, The Merry Widow, which the music gets repeated, the idea of Bluebeard, is that French folktale about, dates back to the 1600s. the concept of a Bluebeard, which is a man who serially marries women who then mysteriously die so he can keep marrying women, that does exist. I think the thing is, what Hitchcock does with Cotten's character that I find so intriguing is, a Bluebeard character, which is this grand seducer and this passionate, character, right? And it's easy to kind of view a Bluebeard's murders as crimes of passion. What I think Hitchcock does that's so interesting with Cotten's character is that he is devoid of emotion, right? It's not that he is so passionately in love. He just views these. Like he says, he has that line where he talks about, there's the line where somebody says, you're talking about these women. These women aren't cattle, and he goes, "Aren't they? Or are they?" That's what it is. Widows are people, are they? And you're like, Jesus Christ! Like that is, you can't help but feel like this is, maybe in a way, this echoes what must have been felt by men that felt by people who knew men that came home from World War I. It will be felt by people who know men that come home from World War II, where something just broke, and they just don't have the ability to view people as people.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Bluebeard thing is an element of it, but it's different than that because it is a compulsion on his part. Like when he is talking about, he's just like he goes into a trance and he starts like strangling whatever is nearby him, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it. And well, he knows he kills women, but it's almost like this sick compulsion he has. And since it is based on a real serial killer, it does have this thing that we just didn't get in movies of, this is what a real monster looks like. Like you were saying, real monsters aren't Hannibal Lecter. We don't have Hannibal Lecter at the time, but like, it's not Dracula, it's not Nosferatu. It's not even Peter Lorre in fucking M, where he's this sweaty little guy running around town going, "Oh, they're going to kill me." It's this guy in a suit who everyone thinks is charming. It's like, oh, he's a good-looking cat. He can talk. He's very charming. Let's let him into our house. We'll give him some food. It's the reason why the FBI says that at any time in America there are 300 active serial killers going, and you just go, that's upsetting.
That's a high number.
That is truly upsetting. That is way more documentaries than Netflix can even produce. And they're not getting caught. So, and there's a reason why they're not getting caught, because they're just guys living their life, doing their thing. Well, unless you talk to them about widows, and then they get really suspicious.
Get really upset. Something that, and I don't mean to, this is going to make Tom go off, I think, because I'm about to invoke your favorite. But I feel like this movie kind of does a similar thing that Halloween does, right? Where you have like suburbia, and you have this small American town where it's like everything is safe, and then this filmmaker comes in and goes, actually, you do think you're safe, sure, but Uncle Charlie's coming to town, or in John Carpenter's case, Michael Myers. And I feel like, 100%. I don't know if John Carpenter's ever cited this movie, but it feels like there is kind of it'd be a good double feature, I guess, maybe more than anything else.
I think you're 100% right, and I think if there's definitely multiple reasons why this got inducted before Psycho, but I think that's a key element to why this gets in before Psycho, because Psycho doesn't have that element. Psycho is, in a fucking an almost abandoned motel on the side of a dead highway. There's no like, oh, this guy's coming into your town, and you're not safe in your suburban enclave. It's no, guys, just don't go to abandoned highways and go to the guy who's like, hey, you want to come into my room filled with taxidermy as I eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while I watch you and go, hey, do you like my mother? My mother's nice.
I will say, though, Tom, to that point, what you're saying about, this for Psycho, there's also the element of Psycho, you called this sleazy, but, shadow of a doubt, but Psycho was in its reputation for a long while, despite being very popular, right?
Oh yeah,
it has the
I know what you're gonna say.
reputation of a trashy paperback, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, no,
And that
100%.
it's
That's another reason. Yeah.
and many of Hitchcock's films did. Shadow of a Doubt is one that you look at, and for as sleazy as the subject is, it's so masterfully made, and it never goes for what you could accuse Psycho of going for. Not that we would now, but in its day, it never goes for cheap, visceral shock. Now, to the point that Micah was making about the small town suburban life, part of why that is so well executed in this film, and this is the other element we need to talk about, is did you guys catch who writes this script?
Well, I was looking it up, but
That is playwright and I believe Pulitzer Prize winner Thornton Wilder. Thornton Wilder, best known for Our Town, a play put on by virtually every high school in America, the very pleasant play about life and death in the simple small town of Grover's Corners. Now, Our Town is a great play, but it is also a very polite and sweet play about a boy and a girl growing up in this small town and falling in love and getting married and having a child, and then the girl dies, and it's about just life and death in the small town. And it is absolutely incredible. I mean it sincerely incredible that that Alfred Hitchcock specifically went, all right, you know who should write the script for this murder in a small town movie? Let's get the guy who did art. That would be the equivalent of like if Jason Blum was like, I want to remake the Amityville Horror. I want to make a movie about this murder house. Let's get the team that wrote Encanto. You know what I mean? You're like, I can see your thinking here, but
Or it's like, hey, we need to reboot the Halloween franchise about small town USA being haunted by a madman. Let's get the guys who created Eastbound and Down.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, like, it works like gangbusters in this film. I mean, that Thornton Wilder script, and I know other people contributed, but that works, and apparently Hitchcock sought him out and was like, that's the guy I want to do it, because he was such an admirer of Our Town. Which now I think, quite frankly, that I want a remake of Shadow of a Doubt where the narrator character from Our Town comes out and just kind of guides you through everything, a la the play. Just, and down here in Grover's Corners, sometimes nieces and uncles have an oddly close relationship. That's the other element that we kind of have to touch on with this in talking about it, is that I think Shadow of a Doubt represents a shift in Hitchcock's career. Tom and I have talked off mic a lot about like the interesting phases of a Steven Spielberg career, where he has a certain periods, and it's not as simple as like, just post 9/11 or anything like that. But there are just very conscious, like, this is an artistic shift he makes that he's never. There's no reeling that back in at that point, right? Like he has his 70s, 80s blockbuster, like family popcorn entertainment phase. And then and I know he does Jurassic Park the same year as Schindler's List, but that's like the pivot point where it's like, he's not ever going to be able to just be the blockbuster guy again. Like if he does, something's going to be a little missing. And then post 9/11, War of the Worlds, Munich, everything running through there. Hitchcock, too, has those moments where we were just talking about those earlier films that he did. 39 Steps, Saboteur, Suspicion, even Rebecca. There is a, how do I put this, maybe a bit more of a formalism to it. And there are, that's not to suggest that there are not specific visual cues and camera movements. Like, he does interesting camera movements and things like Young and Innocent, but this is a movie where he really has a leap forward as a visual stylist, and also he's really going all in on the psychosexual stuff in this movie that from this point onward would be such a key component of all of his films going forward.
Well, I mean, this is definitely a big step in that. I think it definitely started in Rebecca, because I think before that, I think it was. This isn't to say he didn't make good movies before Rebecca, but he was a guy who
I
was
mean, he made
kind of
Jamaica
just
in.
Obviously, he made Jamaica in. Everyone's favorite movie. They're still talking about it down at the local watering holes before they cornhole each other behind the bar.
And the Pleasure Garden, of course.
Obviously,
Pleasure Garden.
the Pleasure Garden. That's what we call it when we go out back and cornhole each other behind the bar in front of a dumpster. It is the Pleasure Garden. But but before Rebecca, he was kind of just making straight ahead thrillers for the most part. That was really the thing he did. And Rebecca, it was a shift because it was a kind of a gothic romantic thriller, but not really. It was more about the air of maybe there's violence. It's kind of doing something like this movie. It's very similar to this movie where we don't know if Laurence Olivier did this thing. Like, what happened? What's going on? There's this looming specter. And he's still making thrillers, obviously, but they're, I don't want to say elevated, but he's taking different paths to them. He's not just he's kind of honing in on just building it up and letting the characters come through or it's like this is not the same guy who would make Pleasure Garden. This is not the same guy. Rebecca
Made an
was
Elastic Affair.
Yes. Rebecca is a movie where he was getting nominated for Oscars, basically. And from that point on, he is a different guy. And he's going to keep making thrillers. There's no, like, Rear Window's a thriller. North by Northwest is a thriller. But there is a marked difference. He's getting bigger budgets. He's able to do more. He's able to bring a new dimension to the thriller, which nobody was able to do before because, as we'll see in Psycho, or even Vertigo. Like we said, Vertigo, in the episode, Vertigo wasn't loved at the time. People didn't really respect these movies. So for him to be able to do this shit and really get that opportunity to take this leap, it's honestly not too dissimilar from like Jaws or Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you're just like, oh, if you let a guy have a big enough budget to do this artistically, this shit is the best thing that's ever happened to anybody.
And I don't disagree with you on the Rebecca point, Tom. I think the thing that strikes me about Shadow of a Doubt in particular is even with Rebecca, like, if we're looking at that era, let's just start with, whether it's Man Who Knew Too Much or 39 Steps, right? Because prior to that, nobody out there is talking about number 17. So Man Who Knew Too Much, 39 Steps.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. So you get Secret Agent, Sabotage, Young and Innocent, Lady Vanishes, Jamaica Inn, Rebecca, Foreign Correspondent, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Suspicion, Saboteur. Now, you are 100% right about Rebecca and how it connects to Shadow of a Doubt, and we'll obviously be talking about Rebecca on a later season of this show. But I do think up until Shadow of a Doubt, every one of these movies is still a plot movie, right?
Yeah.
Rebecca a little less so, but that's a story. And what Hitchcock is doing up until Shadow of a Doubt is he is telling you, come to my movie and I am going to tell you a story. And those stories, the act of listening to a story, watching a story, is a cerebral act, right? Shadow of a Doubt is not a story movie. It's a vibe. Not. And so, Tom, you said you use the term elevated. I think the interesting thing is that what Hitchcock starts to do with Shadow of a Doubt, and it continues from there, is he starts to go lower in a way. He's moving below the head. He's moving below the brain, and he's trying to reach the audience on a heart level, on a gut level. He's trying to give you an unsettling feeling. Shadow of a Doubt is tense in a different way than Foreign Correspondent is. Foreign Correspondent, he's running across rooftops, and it's tense, but it's tense because you're trying to figure out the mystery. Lady Vanishes, you're trying to figure out the mystery. You're invested in that. Even Rebecca, when you're trying to go like, is he or isn't he this and that? Shadow of a Doubt, whether or not Joseph Cotten is the Merry Widow killer, right? Kind of doesn't matter. I mean, of course, that's what Teresa Wright's character, Charlie, is trying to unravel. But what this movie's really about is just the vibe of Charlie not being able to see her beloved uncle the same way again. Like that when she knew him as a little girl, he was just fun and friendly. But now that she's older, there's something a little more sinister and aggressive about him. And folks can read into that any other layers they want. Hitchcock sure likes to read into the layers of that a bit. Hitchcock ultimately concludes in the Francois Truffaut interview, I believe, which is, by the way, not my read of this film. I want to be clear.
But you're saying Hitchcock concludes this?
Yeah, so Hitchcock,
Okay.
Truffaut says in the final scene, the girl and her detective sweetheart are standing in front of the church. From the background, we hear the minister's tribute to Uncle Charlie, describing him as an exceptional person. Meanwhile, the girl and the detective are planning their future together, and she makes a rather ambiguous comment, something to the effect that they are the only ones who know the truth. Hitchcock: I don't remember the exact wording, but that's the general meaning. The girl will be in love with her Uncle Charlie for the rest of her life. Now, hardly one to quibble with Mr. Hitchcock, but I don't come away from that movie and feel that my conclusion at the end is, yeah, she's in love with Uncle Charlie for the rest of her life. You know what I mean? Like, I think...
Yeah.
I
think it's more just the loss of innocence.
That's what I'm saying. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there is. We have to address it. This movie is riddled with an incestuous undertone. There's no denying that. That's one of the
You
key
don't say?
elements of it.
Are you saying that Alfred Hitchcock was in the editing room with the door locked the whole time, making sure mom and dad didn't walk in?
But truly, like, you know, I think that I don't know what Hitchcock's read on that. I don't know if if maybe he's saying, like, well, he can forever, because of the way the town remembers him, he can forever be Uncle Charlie, the friendly guy, as opposed to the merry widow killer and all of that. And maybe we don't need to tell everybody what he was, because why make anyone upset with that or anything like that? That's perhaps a conclusion. But, I guess what I'll say is there are so many movies of the time, in the 40s and all that, and movies we've talked about in the registry, films we've talked about in this podcast, the majority of the films that we've discussed, you can boil down to a moral, right? You can boil down to Citizen Kane. What profit a man who gains the world but loses his soul, right? So many of these movies we talked about, we can break down, and even the more morally ambiguous movies like Forget It, Jake, It's Chinatown kind of boils down the message and the idea of Chinatown and its disillusionment. This movie is neither optimistic nor cynical. There's no message to take away from it at the end. It's just disquieting. Like, that's the real masterstroke of it.
I like what what you're saying, that it's not optimistic and it's not cynical. That is interesting, because it has the good feeling of watching an old movie that's in black and white and all that jazz, but then you're watching it and you're like, uh-oh.
Because this
is strange.
Like, there are so many movies now that feel like they need to be either optimistic or nihilistic, and they have to force that moralistic conclusion to it. And there is no... It's not like you leave Shadow of a Doubt and go, the world's a bad place, or the world's a good place, or anything like that. It's just about following Teresa Wright on her journey of this evolving assessment of her uncle. And there are just little flourishes in this film where you can't put it in a box of optimistic or pessimistic. Slowly emerging as one of my favorite characters in this movie, the more I watch it, is the waitress when Uncle Charles and Charlie go to the restaurant. It's just this burnt out 19-year-old.
Yeah.
who just comes to the table.
Which in 1941 means she's an old maid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, she comes to the table and just proceeds to, like, because there are certain things in Hitchcock movies where the humor is miscalibrated or can be a bit over the top, right? Like, I can understand modern audiences brushing up against Dad and his kooky pal describing how they'd kill each other. But there is something funny about, like, this waitress as the proto-Rhea Perlman of Cheers, just kind of showing up at their table and, let me tell you about my day. And it does kind of add a bit of flavor to this town, and it does kind of, I guess, one of the things that's so effective about Shadow of a Doubt that I think is missing in a lot of movies today, there are so many movies. There are so many movies. No, that's That's in plenty of stuff today. You know,
All right, Ted Cruz.
I watched Game of Thrones. I've been told to watch House of the Dragon. That's kind of the same vibe. But no, my point is, like, so many movies today will decide, like, okay, if I want to be a thriller or a horror movie, or even if I just want to make a movie about a serial killer, everyone is going to be a miserable asshole. Like, every character is just bleak, and the world is so bad, and everything's so bad. And it's like, you can do that if you understand that this movie's not supposed to be realistic at all. If you want us to buy into your movie, like, people have to be people, and their lives have to go, they have to have normal, ordinary lives, and everybody else in this movie is just a normal, ordinary person, right? I mean, that's what makes, and we'll talk about it in future, but, like, that's what makes Night of the Hunter so effective. That's what makes so many movies so effective.
And it's like, Micah mentioned it before, Halloween, and even the David Gordon Green ones. It's like, none of the characters are acting like they're in a horror movie until Michael Myers shows up. When the world is a little more dynamic and varied in its, the way people act. Just because you're making a movie about how everything sucks and blah blah blah, it's like, all right, but sometimes people don't know they're in a movie and don't know that they're, executing your thesis statement on life. They are just living their life, and then this thing out of the ordinary happens, then they react. They're not always just, well, I just can't get a break. I just can't get a break. It's also it's things have gotten very one note. I 100% agree.
And to that point, like, so one of the things I was thinking about, and I think that a lot of later thrillers, especially Brian De Palma stuff and all of that, decide to really lean into what is off about a killer or what is this or that. Brian De Palma's early thrillers and their employment of characters who could be read as queer or LGBT, maybe not the most holding up well today. But I look at Joseph Cotten's character, and I am struck by the fact that at multiple points in the movie, despite the implied incestuous kind of vibes between him and Charlie, there is also absolutely kind of a queer coding to Joseph Cotten's character. And that's not to say Alfred Hitchcock is writing a queer character to be the killer. I don't think that's the case any more than it is with Rope or anything like that, or Psycho or anything. But I do just think that he is interested in Hitchcock does so well. He's interested in exploring the idea of somebody who is an outsider, somebody who feels outside of society and their detachment from it. There's that scene where he's cornering Charlie early on, and he has those lines, "We're not just an uncle and a niece, we're something else. I have a feeling that inside of you there's something no one else knows." Like, these kind of lines. And that line especially, I have a feeling that inside of you there's something no one else knows. And the way that kind of rattles Cotton, like, that could be read as, this girl kind of recognizing her uncle's, got something off about him in so many ways, or something that's outside of normal society. It's so interesting that in that moment, she walks away with, they have that exchange. He gives her the ring. She walks away with the ring after saying, "I think there's a secret to you, uncle." And when Cotton turns around, his face has completely dropped. And it's like this moment where he realizes the jig is up early on. Like, he's got to watch out for this. And this is well before we've established the idea that he is the Merry Widow killer, if he is. This is more the fact that, like, in that moment, it's the tension of, I've spent my whole life putting up this facade. This person's onto it. I need to be worried about that. And I find that so compelling.
And, the whole idea of him going after widows, it's a good way for a guy to, weasel his way into a relationship, get money out of women that he most likely doesn't have to have sex with, just has to show them, affection, and weasel his way in. Which, if he is a gay man, it's definitely a lot easier to not have sex with a woman than to have sex with a woman. So I think there's definitely something there.
Well, also, well, and this isn't really playing off what you're saying. I'm just like remembering thinking about Charlie and stuff, and it is just wild. It's making me think of Rian Johnson and what he's doing with the Knives Out movies, where like the mystery of this movie for the first like I made this note when I was at the beginning where I said it's fun because we know he's bad, but we don't know why or how.
Mm-hmm.
And just on like if we strip away like the metaphors and allegories and all this other stuff, like I think as a thriller and like a weird whodunit, it's also unique and original in that way because we don't even know what the crime is for most of this movie, but we know there's something. And that's just, I mean, that's Hitchcock, baby. I love that.
and then to that degree, there's also kind of a skewering of the true crime fan before its newest incarnation today, which is the dad and his buddy keep obsessing over murder stories and missing the multiple murder attempts being made on the daughter. Just like,
or just
they're over here going like,
just missing out on the brother-in-law going into a dead-eyed trance and saying, widows are bad. We need to murder widows. They're fat piggies. Oink, oink, oink into the slaughter pit.
But especially like that moment. That moment of like, this guy has been showing up, their friend has been showing up at the house being like, oh, you could use mushrooms to kill someone and they'd never know. Oh, only I am clever enough to spot the perfect murder. And then later go, hey, that's weird. Your shed door stuck, and your daughter was trapped in there with the exhaust fumes. Weird, that door. Don't know how that happened. Have a good night. Like, just completely oblivious.
My favorite line in this movie, even though there's all this great, there's so much stuff to dig into, but my favorite line is him holding those mushrooms and go, would you eat them? And then he's like, yeah, I'd eat them and stuff. And he goes, well, then I've got it. I'd get manslaughter, and I doubt I'd get that. Like, this guy's the best.
My favorite is just when he shows up and the wife just goes, oh God, Herb's here again. Just that little bit of world building. Just this annoying neighbor who looks roughly 40 years younger than Clarence. It's, but again, just, oh, God damn it, Herb is here again.
Well, I
just love that.
Part of the beauty of this is that it has all of that local town flavor that Thornton Wilder was so good at in a play like Our Town. And then it just goes, okay, well, what if there was a murder in Our Town? The same way that, like, the murder subplot or a plot of this movie, the murder plot of this movie is akin to the serial killer subplot of The Young Girls of Rochefort, where it's just like everybody's going about their lives and then occasionally going, huh, look in the paper, another body turned up. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da. It's like just life still goes on and people still have their little personalities and quirks,
Take it easy on the mic there, fucko.
I do want to talk about one scene in particular. My favorite scene in this movie, the scene that is, I had a note that says Brian De Palma watches this scene and, let's just say, does stuff, which is the library scene. The library scene is Hitchcock pulling out all of the stops. I mean, earlier in the film, he's already playing around with light and darkness, when Uncle Charlie arrives at the train station, there's all that black smoke, things like that. But in the library scene, the camera movements that he's using.
Get out of here with
the
camera movement when
the
she
crane shot above her, but even before that, like, the use of shadow to basically represent, like, oh, yes, she's moving from obscuration and darkness into enlightenment. And then a little touch that I loved. So he uses the Merry Widow waltz, right, from the operetta The Merry Widow, and he introduces the music at the very beginning with that shot of all the couples waltzing, which I think is something that David Lynch ends up repurposing from Mulholland Drive. But he does that shot of all them dancing, and then it later returns as something that they hum throughout. Teresa Wright talking about how she gets the melody stuck in her head, and she can't remember what it's called, and then that great bit with Cotten going, it's the Blue Danube waltz, and Charlie goes, oh, of course, Blue Danube. No, wait, no, it isn't. Again, another hint at, like, she can see through Cotten. But then the way they use the audio of the Merry Widow waltz throughout the camera panning down this very long article about the Merry Widow, the Merry Widow killer. We've seen plenty of older films where they'll just, like, put text on screen for a long scroll. And nowadays, as a modern viewer, you're, like, looking at your watch going, oh, my God, oh, this is... But just by using that dynamic waltz music, it lets you read the whole thing. Like you're more invested just because of the use of that score. And then all culminating in her looking at the ring and remembering the text written on the ring, which has been introduced an hour ago, and that all of us in the audience have definitely forgotten about by now. And then she brings it back out. And then, as you said, Micah, that crane shot in the library as she's having the revelation where, because he hasn't done that at any other point in this movie, you're suddenly like, it gives you a jolt as a viewer because you just kind of forget that a camera can do that. Like, he's breaking the rules of his cinematic world in such an engaging way. Like, honestly, when we're talking about, like, why this gets in the registry, that library scene alone could be why it's so masterfully executed without ever being overly showy.
I think before rewatching this movie the other day for this podcast, I was a little bit, like, feeling like, oh, this is kind of like saying Wes Anderson's best movie is Bottle Rocket. Like, it's a good movie. I like that movie. It gets him started, but why would you say that's his best movie? Why would you put that in the film registry if you're doing Wes Anderson? And then I rewatched it, and like halfway through, I'm like, yeah, this should definitely be in there, and this should be. I mean, this is right up there with his other like 6 or 7 great movies. Yeah, I mean, I know we spent a lot of time discussing like why you would put it in there above something like Psycho and all of that. And even though I wouldn't put it there first, I do realize watching it this is the third time now. I'm like, yeah, this is unbelievable, and it's very subtle in a lot of ways, and it's not showy, and I love that about it.
And it's not showy, and it's not all that, and you kind of like, if all right, you put Vertigo in as the first Hitchcock. So what do we do for the second one? We do Shadow of a Doubt. It's interesting because this is one of maybe the only movie he made where it's like there's no hook. There's no like easily digestible like, oh, well, you got to see what he does with this idea. Oh man, a man gets wrongly accused of being a spy, so he runs across Mount Rushmore, or this guy witnesses a murder from across the hall and across the alleyway, and he stays in the apartment the whole time. Isn't that such a unique hook? This isn't a hook movie. This isn't a mystery box movie. It's just its own unique thing, not just in his filmography, but in the film world at the time. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it in before Psycho or Rear Window, but for a guy with this kind of career, you absolutely have to put it in. It's one of his best by being, in many ways, one of the least like his movies he's ever made.
Well, it's also got that cast of like Teresa Wright, I think, has either just won an Academy Award or is about to win an Academy Award for Mrs. Miniver. Joseph Cotten, obviously, Citizen Kane and Magnificent Ambersons and all. There's just something, there's something about what he does with this and the way that he's just, we talked about like Psycho, Rear Window, they're dime store novel movies, right? Like their sleaze is up front. It's the way that he's able to make a movie that on its surface feels like a classic Hollywood movie and just make something that is so subversive, quietly subversive.
You were saying before that it's a movie with no, it's hard to like boil down the moral or anything. And I agree. I 100% agree. But it just made me realize that this is basically one of the best coming of age movies ever made. You wouldn't think of it that way, but it really is about this frankly spoiled little girl who really has no idea how the world works, kind of coming to grips with the little facade she has in her mind crumbling all around her. And like you said, it's not optimistic, it's not nihilistic, it's kind of this mix in between. Yeah, her the way she views her uncle, the love of her life, basically is shattered around her, but then she ends up with a guy she never actually would have thought she'd ever be with, and it seems like this is going to be a good relationship for her. She's no longer just like going for whatever doofus that's around, like, hey, want to go see a movie? No, I have a sore throat. I'm gonna go hang out with this detective who doesn't have a chin.
Oh, you're right. That was what it was.
I always wondered what it would be like if a man's head was connected directly to his shoulders. So I'm glad I got to see that.
Oh
Um, but yeah, it's like it's it's a coming of age story, realizing that the adults in your life don't know it all, that they're not all good, that her parents are kind of stupidly naive. They're not bad people, they're naive, and that her uncle's a fucking psychopath. It's a coming of age movie, You may I think people need to put it in that kind of category. And I also kind of see why it gets inducted in this year, cuz this is kind of the era. This is 91,
yeah.
correct? This is kind of the era where a lot of serial killers are getting executed on death row. Ted Bundy was killed in 89. Dahmer's like 2-3 years off. Gacy's has been arrested, I believe, and he's a few years from getting executed. This is like the time where the serial killer boom is kind of cascading down into, yeah, we got him. We're gonna fucking kill him now. So like, can we please stop talking about these fucking guys? It's kind of like putting it in because everyone was so obsessed with serial killers at the time. Silence of the Lambs
and
winning Best
to
Picture.
Your point, with that, one thing we didn't really touch on, but they kind of only in one tossed off line give a bit of an origin story to why Joseph Cotten's so messed up, which is which is saying he got hit in the head with a swing and suddenly became evil. And
he fell off his bike on an icy road and bonked his head.
Well, the reason I went to that is, of course, as you know, that is the origin story of John Wayne Gacy too, because as we all know, his father was a drinker, and his mother cried in bed, folding John Wayne's T-shirts as the swing set hit his head, as Sufjan Stevens so succinctly put it on "Come On, Feel the Illinois." I don't care about serial killers at all. I only know this information from the Sufjan Stevens song.
Not gonna lie, maybe a little more annoying than the serial killer people. Just gotta say that. Sufjan Stevens gives you any knowledge.
No. Sufjan Stevens is no. We're not gonna accept that, Tom.
No, because if you listen to Sufjan Stevens, that means your neighborhood's price.
Do you call him Sufjan Stevens?
I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no. This is the thing. This is what I'm gonna say. Listen, then Micah, please give your thoughts on Shadow of Doubt. I just want to say this. Tom, you keep saying, "Oh, you guys thinking I'm going to have any progeny." You have to, because with shit like that, you've already become a dad. If you're already going, what's that guy called? Sufjan Stevens? Yeah, back in my day, we had real music. I'm going to go listen to some more Steely Dan. Like, that's Sufjan Stevens. Micah, any final thoughts on Shadow of a Doubt?
Yeah, just another thing that he is a classic, Hitchcock thing where he's playing with like the power dynamics in the movie. And I just wanted to point out a couple that are incredible. The moment where it seems like little Charlie is really not gonna make it through this whole thing, and then she walks out and she's wearing the ring triumphantly. It's a great moment as she walks up the stairs and regains the power of the situation. And then I think it's before that, he's at the top of the stairs looking down as she realizes exactly what everything is. Yeah. And that beautiful moment where he is above her in the power dynamic again, and yet she knows. I mean, we only hardly touched on it, but the visual, the shooting most of this movie on location, like it feels lived in, it feels real. And he is the master. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock movies never look bad. So even just on that level, this movie is worth watching. But also you have all this other we discussed.
Just a happy accident that the war, made prices for materials skyrocket so high that the studio said, "You're not building this on a set. We're not spending that goddamn money. It's too fucking expensive. There's a war going on. Find somewhere."
Well, and on that last little note, according to Hitchcock, I believe they found a house that they liked. And that the owner of the home, and originally Wilder thought the house was too big for a bank clerk, but as Hitchcock says, upon investigation, it turned out that the man who lived there was in the same financial bracket as our character, so Wilder agreed to use it. But when we came back 2 weeks prior to the shooting, the owner was so pleased that his house was going to be in a picture that he had it completely repainted. So we had to go in and get his permission to paint it dirty again. And when we were through, naturally, we had it all done over again with bright new colors. With all that being said, Tom, how do you think Shadow of a Doubt did at the Academy Awards that year? And I will caution you, this isn't Academy Awards we've talked about previously on the show.
I don't know. Picture, actress, actor, screenplay, nominee.
Okay. No. It did get a nomination, but only one. It was not nominated for Best Picture. The nominees that year were For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, The Human Comedy, In Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier, The Oxbow Incident, The Song of Bernadette, Watch on the Rhine, and the winner, Casablanca. It was nominated for only one award, which was Best Original Motion Picture Story, which it lost to The Human Comedy. And I will just editorialize here and go, bad choice. The Human Comedy is boring.
Okay.
But
also, Oxbow Incident, good flick.
Yes, well, the only two of that, Oxbow Incident and Casablanca, are the only two of the Best Picture nominees that are in the National Film Registry. But Shadow of a Doubt, of course, is, and it will not be the last Hitchcock to get into the National Film Registry by a long shot. We're so glad we got to talk about it, and we are so glad, Micah, that you joined us to talk about Shadow of a Doubt. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Oh, it's exciting. I love talking Hitchcock.
Speaking of talking, did you want to talk about everything else you're doing in all your projects?
Yeah, we mentioned it. Well, Mike mentioned it at the top of the show. I host a podcast with my wife. It's the McCaw Podcast Universe, and we exist to prove people wrong when they say sequels are never better than the originals. And we cover film franchises. As of this recording, we're covering X-Men. I don't know what we'll be recording when this episode comes out. I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and we've had Mike and Tom on. So if you need a place to start, that's a good place to start.
Is it
Well,
though?
I think it is. Those are some fun episodes.
But also, we're like the fourth entry in a six entry franchise, and then entry 7 in a 10 entry franchise.
Yeah.
Bit odd.
It's perfect.
Not gonna lie, bit odd.
And then also, I released an album in November called A Beautiful Divorce, and it is about how the evangelical American church needs to divorce their patriotism from their faith and put the teachings of Christ above their love of political parties. So if that interests you, you can listen to that album anywhere.
I mean, listen, Mike, you said you don't know what franchise you're doing next. Here's my pitch. I think you should do the Blondie movies. There were like 15 of them.
Movies.
Did you know about these?
I don't know about these.
Go home and open up your local newspaper. Look for the Blondie comic strip.
Blondie the comic strip?
Correct. Back in the day.
Films from 1938 to 1950.
Yeah. They cranked those fuckers out.
Oh man.
It co-stars the voice of Judy Jetson and a fella named Arthur Lake, who is one of the most forgotten movie stars who I love. It's so weird. I think Veronica Lake shows up in one of them. It's a fascinating
I have to tell
thing.
you, Mike, I can promise you we will never cover the Blondie series. 28 is far too many.
I'm going to figure out how to hack your RSS feed. I'm just going to start plugging them in there.
We dip anytime we're not talking about superheroes, so hopefully he wears a cape in one of them.
Listen, it's a comic book movie. You cannot argue.
Yeah.
You cannot argue.
Leave the boy alone.
It's the longest running comic movie franchise still. Marvel hasn't beat it yet.
Leave the boy alone.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, Micah, thank you so much for joining us. We got to let you go because you've got 28 Blondie movies to watch. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and me, who can submit their nominations for the registry in the form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of every episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. The only criteria? It must be an American film that's at least 10 years old. Here are today's picks.
My pick is the first and so far only movie directed by Park Chan-wook. It is Stoker. That is a movie that has the exact same level. Well, not the exact same, because like everyone who's come after Hitchcock after the fucking Hays Code died was able to push things to the natural sleazy extreme that Hitch only wishes he could have, like Brian De Palma with Body Double or Dress to Kill. This is another movie about, well, what if an uncle and a niece had more sexual chemistry than any mainstream acting couple in the world? What if an aunt and an uncle was more arousing than J-Lo and Affleck? But then what if this uncle and niece have a falling out? What if things start to go awry? Being that it's Park Chan-wook in 2013, boy, do they go awry. It is a weird fucking movie. It is a dark movie. Weirdly sexually appealing movie. Mia Wasikowska, I don't know, does something for me there. I'm sure Mike will say something about Ozymandias being appealing in that movie.
His name is Matthew Good, Tom.
No, it's not. It's Ozymandias. Nicole
Kidman's in that movie.
She is in that movie. That was like kind of like that movie that broke the dam for her like resurgence in Hollywood, because it felt like for years before that she was just in no man's land, where she either wasn't doing things or whatever she was in wasn't getting fucking released to like the mainstream public. And then all of a sudden this movie came out and everyone's like, oh yeah, Nicole Kidman's great. The only way we'll be able to get Park Chan-wook into the National Film Registry seems like we should absolutely take that chance to put him in, one of the most iconic directors of the last 20, 30 years. Stoker's an amazing movie. It is like quite obvious the literal like successor to Shadow of a Doubt, and also does what Hitchcock couldn't do and able to end the movie darkly and not kind of like pussy out and be like, well, the girl's good. Stoker's like, no. This girl's bad. She is very bad. You do not have a connection with this man if you are not psychotic. So thank you, Park. I don't know. Stoker is like the obvious choice to me, and I'm glad it is eligible.
One quick correction there. I do want to note, Tom, and I know you just misspoke, but what you meant was it is the only eligible film for the registry directed by Park Chan-wook. You said it is the only film directed by Park Chan-wook, to which I want to note.
Yes, obviously.
Before Film Twitter yells at us.
Film Twitter's not going to yell at us. We don't count.
Tom, it's interesting. It's funny that you mentioned the Hays Code in particular. You mentioned the Hays Code, and you also mentioned this girl is not good. She is very, very messed up. Because both of those relate to my choice for the registry. My film comes out about a decade after Shadow of a Doubt. It comes out in 1956. It is directed by Mervyn LeRoy. It's not particularly well known today, but it was very, very controversial in its day. It's a motion picture called The Bad Seed, based on a book and play. The book was such a hit. It was such a smash hit. But it revolves around a sweet, innocent little girl who's played to an Oscar nomination by Patty McCormack. A sweet, innocent little girl who is just, how do I put this, murdering the shit out of people. Just a murderous little girl who is just a mentally disturbed little girl. It was such a shocking film in its shocking book in its day. Jeffrey Sherlock from the Production Code Administration sent a letter to all of the studios saying, don't option this book because the property violates the spirit and letter of the code. So the production code literally was just, before anybody even tried, was just like, don't make this book a movie. And Jack Warner said, screw you. I'm going to do it anyway. United States Pictures said they would produce it for Warner Brothers if it was approved by the PCA. So ultimately, Mervyn LeRoy was able to make a treatment for the film that got around the production code's rules, including the crime doesn't pay rule. In the book and the play, the murderous little girl, Rhoda Penmark, survives and is treated as a sweet little girl. In the movie, they do have to kill her off in order to avoid that crime doesn't pay rule. But it is I actually did the play in high school. It is a film that you watch and you're just struck by the fact that it is still so disturbing. Now, what, like 50 plus years later, 60, 70 years later, I mean, that Patty McCormack performance is still haunting. Mervyn LeRoy does an incredible job directing that film and making it just feel so tense. And, the 50s and 60s are when we start to get this looking inward, this American, our children are dangerous, the communists are dangerous, isn't that paranoia? I think Night of the Living Dead gets a lot of credit for, showing off that American paranoia, but The Bad Seed is very much a crucial component of that Cold War, our children are the enemy paranoia, and I think it absolutely deserves a place in the registry.
Let's all go to the lobby, lobby, lobby.
Thank you again to Micah McCaw for joining us. Next week, we've got a returning guest and a pre-code crime drama. Kenny Neibart joins us for I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. Don't forget to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Here on You're Missing Out.
They honor movies of historical, cultural, or aesthetic importance on the National Film Registry.